Welcome back, everybody. Super excited. Another Friday night. Got Monte's Gem podcast. Me and Jake are happy and excited about this one.
A little bit of a
A
special
special
one.
for you.
Yeah, we got a
So,
special guest.
like no other,
Hmm
first time with three people, we're going to introduce to you our brother, Isaac Abbs. Hit it, Jake.
How was that?
Hey everybody, that's me, the wild thing.
That's right. So you got me, the oldest, Jake is the youngest, Isaac is the middle child. And something that's
One of the
super
middle.
unique and appreciative that I have about Isaac is that he's just, I mean, he's just willing to do just about absolutely anything. And so I think sometimes in life that has went to his demise where
Yeah.
maybe his carelessness, but his no fear attitude has also been able to, I think, give him a lot of opportunities, especially in his job and his placement and how he's been able to proceed in life, and just to be able to be the person he currently is. And so we're super excited to be able to have Isaac. Isaac is an automotive mechanic. So one of the big things that we wanted to have with this podcast is him just talking about automotive issues that a lot of the general public isn't aware of. So Isaac owns his own mechanic shop at home. So he works from home. And so we wanted to be able to give him an opportunity to share his experience, maybe give us some advice and some tips for people listening who may not understand the process or what are feeling comfortable with taking their car to a mechanic. And maybe Isaac just being able to share his knowledge in that, because I think oftentimes mechanics can be very, very unapproachable and people feel very, very nervous and fearful going to a mechanic that they're going to get taken advantage of, or they don't know how to talk to them. And it's just like, I don't know. Growing up, I always felt that way, at least. So Isaac, we wanted to start off with you just being able to kind of share your childhood, like, what it was like being the middle child. And then, yeah.
I think one thing that I would like to say before we go a little bit is I think the main thing about Isaac for me is a lot of people, everybody is always, it's kind of like a cliche to say, it's like, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want to do and not care what people think. I'm not going to care what people think. But deep down, everybody cares what everybody thinks. But I think Isaac is the epitome of genuinely not caring what anyone thinks. He's just going to do what he wants to do. And I think that was kind of always, I don't know, that's just something that always stuck out to me. So,
Yeah, whether it was him or mom and
yeah.
dad caring about what he
Yeah.
think, it was like pretty much Isaac's world, and that's how it's gonna be.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, childhood, being like the middle child, I didn't really notice anything different, but it's like, I mean, you being the oldest and you being the youngest, you guys wouldn't know any different either. It seemed like I was always getting in trouble. That's something that it seems like Dad and I always had in common, because I think when Dad was younger, he was a pretty big troublemaker too. We were both kind of wild.
Yeah.
I think that's Dad and I butt heads a lot though too, because I think we had really similar personalities,
Yeah.
and
And that you
And I
guys are
think
very
that comes
stubborn.
from, yes, yeah, the stubbornness aspect that I'm right, you're wrong. There's only one way of thinking, and that's absolutely it.
yeah,
I mean, in high school, you had a liquor cabinet down in the basement. I remember like telling Dad, it's like, Dad, like he's got a liquor. He's like, oh no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Like, yeah, yes, he does. Like you guys are allowing this. He's like, well, I'll talk to your mom about it. She'll have to go look and see. It's just like, what the heck, dude? Like,
well, that's one of those things too. Is it seems like Dad also had that same mentality of he didn't care what people thought either. He was doing his own way on things, just like a similar way that I do. It's
Yeah.
just. I mean, over this last week, I've been thinking about a lot what Dad and I had in common, and it seems like our personalities were just super close. of the wildness, and Dad had motorcycles, I've got motorcycles, and the cool cars, and Dad always had cool stuff like that too.
I mean, when you were younger, you were smoking too. Do you think like that like carried over into like just?
That was just kind of like a friends were doing it, and I thought, hey, I'll try it, and I liked it, and I just kept doing it. But then after a while, it was just like, man, why am I doing this? It's a lot of money, and it's not healthy, and sometimes it just makes you feel like crap, so.
But I was wondering, like, maybe as like a 5 or 6 year old kid, were you like stealing Dad's Marlboro Reds and like popping them, and that's what kind of got you in the habit of doing it, or?
No, I never tried a cigarette until I think I was 18 when I tried. I might have been late 17, but it was because we were driving around, me and some buddies, and they were smoking, and they were like, or I said I wanted to try one or something. I tried one, and then from there, there were some gay little girly cigarettes or something like that. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be caught dead smoking these things, so I'll smoke what my dad does. So I got some Marlboro Reds.
Okay, so you went straight to like Marlboro Reds. You didn't do like Swisher Sweets, like cigars or anything like that?
No, not really. I mean, I dabbled in all that stuff, but not really.
And did you like throw up the first time or get headaches or anything like that, or?
No, the first time you do, you get like super lightheaded. But I mean, at that younger age, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like dehydrated, almost lightheaded, or like what?
Like so when you stand up really fast, when you sit down, and like sometimes you get super lightheaded, just like that.
And but then you converted from cigarettes, and then you and Dad did the electronic cigarettes, or what were those called?
Yeah, the e-cigarettes. That was like when they first came out. And Dad smoked that one until he died. But I also tried chew too, which I actually chewed for a while, but that dried out my mouth really bad. So like, especially when I was like working on, so the one kind of chew that I liked was Red Man. It was the big leaves that you'd actually chew up. It tastes like raisins, but man, I'd work on some cars, and you got to like spit every minute or so, and you're up under a dash, and then you accidentally swallow it. Oh man, it's so gross.
Oh my.
Yeah, so I remember another thing that was super gross with like chewing is when I had my truck, I'd have a spitter that was in the center console. Well, I'd spit there, well, sometimes I carry water with me too. One time I accidentally dip spit, dude. I about started puking all over my truck. It was the grossest thing I've ever done.
Oh my god,
it was so sick.
No,
I tried dipping once. It was I went and played a baseball game, and then I was driving back, and I was in like White Pigeon to pick up my car because it was me and another guy that I played with, and we were coming back home, and I tried it. Dude, I got so sick to my stomach where I never tried it again, dude. It was
the one thing that's made me super sick before is cigars. So I didn't know, like, when you smoke cigars, you don't actually inhale it. You just like swish it around in your mouth and blow it out. Well, I inhaled it and inhaled it and inhaled it. And the next thing I knew, I was just so sick. My stomach was so upset. It was, that was the worst probably.
And so when you're smoking cigarettes, you actually inhale it?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like you suck in and then you inhale it through your nose? It
goes down to your lungs.
Huh.
But like with cigars, you just swish the smoke around in your mouth because it's like so amplified. I mean, you could inhale it if you're like super acclimated to them, but yeah, especially for somebody who's like a novice and not like a cigar smoker all the time, it's like it's probably the equivalent of smoking like 3 or 4 cigarettes all at the same time.
Oh wow! If you inhale it,
it's rough, dude.
Oh wow!
And you don't notice it right at first until you take like 4 or 5 hits all into your lungs, and then you'll feel sick.
And what about like growing up? Do you think there were any experiences like? Do you think it was trying to like impress your older siblings that created that wildness inside of you? Because I mean, it was from a very young age. You were always doing daredevil type things. Like, I remember, wasn't it back at the log cabin where you had a bike and we had this ramp with a rock and you were like doing backflips and you stopped riding your bike? Dad asked you like one day, why'd you stop riding your bike, Isaac? You're like, I just got tired of it. But you actually like bent the rim, right?
Yeah. So there was a grass patch. It wasn't a rock and a ramp or anything, but it was a grass patch that went from the driveway and kind of slanted up like that. And yeah, I would get going as fast as I could, and then I'd rip up on the bike and I'd do backflips. And I think out of all the, I don't know, I'd probably tried it 75 times. I almost landed it one time, but then like it was like 3 times after me almost landing it, I landed on the front wheel and it just bent the shit out of it. And then I put up my bike because like you'd be riding it and it'd be going like this back and forth. Yeah, Dad asked me about it one day, and I was just like, "Oh no, I'm just kind of tired of riding my bike."
Yeah.
I think it was one of the kids actually told on me. They were like, "Oh yeah, Isaac was doing backflips again." And he bent his wheel. I don't remember who it was, but I don't remember getting another bike though. So after everybody figured it out, I just rode my bent wheeled bike there for a while.
And when you talk about backflips, you were actually going like up and under over. Like how many times were you like falling on your head or something like that?
Like 74
Without a helmet.
75-ish. I don't know. It's hard to say how many times I did it. Brittany, I don't know. Brittany might have a better idea, but dude, I did them all the time. But then we also spent a lot of time at Grandpa's house, so it's hard to say like how much time we were left unsupervised where Dad weren't watching us do backflips.
Yeah.
But,
How old were you when you were doing this?
What?
How old were you when you were doing this?
I don't know. I had to be younger than 10. I was probably like 7 or 8, maybe. Well, because we left the log cabin, I think I was 10. Because how old were you?
Senior in high school.
And you're how many years older than me? I'm 91.
So I'm 40. Yeah. I'm 84, so 7 years.
Yeah, you're 7 years older than me.
You might have been like 10 or 11.
Yeah. So I think, I was probably like 7 or 8 when I was doing that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've really ever felt the need to impress anybody. I just like the, maybe the adrenaline.
You're an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, I think that's what it must be, dude. I love doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when we would go over to Grandpa's, there was Brittany. So it goes me, Josh, Brittany, and then Isaac. And then we had another cousin, Craig, that was the same age to Josh. And like whenever we were over there, you were always doing stuff to try to like antagonize people too. So it had to be a little bit of some type of getting some type of recognition or something like that. Like you were the youngest, I guess, out of the 3 of them. So maybe to be able to, I guess, not feel intimidated or not be intimidated by them. But they were all essentially scared of you. Like it's not like they were really gonna like stick up for themselves or anything like that and just be like, it's not like you were the little kid that they were just kind of pushing around and bullying around or anything like that, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I always like to pick at people too. That's a similarity with Dad. Is like Dad was always messing with people, just kind of like poke you here. But when you guys, I mean, Chad, you're probably a better example at that. You're always just pushing buttons and seeing when can I make this person just lose it? And then when they do, be like, what are you so mad about?
Yeah.
It's like I'm similar, but yeah, I don't think I push buttons as much as you do.
Yeah.
But
As me?
bored,
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. I don't ever push anybody's buttons.
Laugher.
Yeah. Dude, you're always poking people's buttons. It's like it's always because you're the main conversationalist, so everybody else is like just kind of sitting there watching, and you're going one after another. You focus on one person, then you switch to another, and you're always you're trying to find that line. And then once you cross that line, then it's explosion. Then it's a fight breaking out, and then everybody's all mad at each other. Yeah.
Well, you guys are just also sensitive. That's not me
right.
pushing buttons.
And what happens too is that Chad, so he'll be he's picking at Jake, and Jake's not budging. So now I'll pick at Isaac.
Yeah.
Okay, he's not budging. Let me try Ashley or Brittany. Here's your shirt. Hey, I got it. Yeah, it's just move on to the next person until
Mhm.
somebody flip. But I think a lot of it too has to do with boredom. Like if there's no real conversation going on, or we're not doing something, because like if we're outside playing sports or something like that, then it doesn't seem like you do it as much. But then we get in this setting where everybody's just kind of sitting around doing nothing. That's like, okay, well, I'm kind of bored, so I'm just gonna start poking at people and see what kind of reactions I can get.
Well, the issue is that we grew up in a small town where there's already not a lot to do. So most of the time it's just sitting around trying to do stuff.
Yeah. One thing I don't really remember is like Dad never really picked at us like that though, did he? Like us kids, like he'd always do it with other people, but I don't really remember him just kind of like poking at us, where he'd just really get us fired up.
No, it would usually be if we were talking about something or something. He'd be like, oh yeah," like, and then he would try to like play out the conversation real life. No, this is the truth. Like this is what really happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess he'd do that.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so it started off like riding a bike and doing flips and stuff like that. But like, how did you like graduate? So let's go through that graduation process. If it went to doing bike backflips, and then to what? What was the next experience?
So when I was growing up, I had that bicycle, and my older brothers, you and Josh, had that electric four-wheeler that by the time that I came around, it was busted, so I never got to ride it. And I always asked Mom and Dad, like, let's get another one, or let's fix this one. And, you know, they would never do it. So then Grandpa, he would let me drive his car. Well, first it started with Grandpa's lawnmower. So I was probably like, I don't know, it couldn't have been 7 or 8 years old, and Grandpa showed us how to at least ride the lawnmowers. And then next thing you know, he was like, oh, well, now I've got a new lawnmower guy.
Yeah.
So he just send these kids out with lawnmowers. And it was crazy because it was a cash cow for an 8-year-old to get, we were getting paid like $5 an hour or something like that. Well, then sometimes Brittany and I would be out, and we'd be mowing the lawn, and we'd mow the lawn when the lawn didn't need mowed. Just, you know. And Grandpa Ron would be like, all right, we got to hold down on the lawn. Sometimes get up to like $150 that he'd owe us and stuff like that. So
well, back at that time too. So our grandma had passed away. Oh man, how old do you think you were when Grandma passed away?
I think I was 4, because I think she died in 95.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say you were 4. Okay, I thought I was 12 or 13.
I don't remember her that much.
Yeah, so I was like 11 to 12. So at that point, Grandpa, I mean, he just felt, I think, really, really lonely. So he would pay us kids to spend the night, especially like during the summer and during Christmas break. He was paying us like $5 a night to like spend the night at his house too. And when he was paying us to spend the night at his house, it wasn't like, oh, just spend the night. It was like, okay, we're going to go out and get food. Like we're going to go to McDonald's or
Dollar General and get you a toy and all sorts of stuff. Dude.
I don't remember getting many toys or anything like that.
I think that was more of a Jake and Ashley thing.
Yeah.
I think that was just a little extra leverage there. I was like, it's a Dollar
But he was
General.
taking us out to eat, and it was, you know, it was pretty much wherever we wanted. I remember chicken coop. I would always like get smelt, and I was getting like 2 smelt dinners and steak, French fries, and I mean, he was spending probably $16, $17 on my dinner, and this is like in the 90s. Like it was super expensive.
When it was Josh, Brittany, Craig, and I, if I said I wanted to go to McDonald's, and Brittany said Burger King, Josh said Taco Bell, and Craig said hot dog,
go all of them.
Places. It was great. Like, you think about that now. If my kids told me, "Oh, let's go here and here," no, we're going to one place. We're not going to 4 places. That's great.
Well, that's what's funny is I don't remember if you guys remember, but on Fridays, so our parents and our family all worked in a printing business. It was essentially in my grandpa's house where Isaac currently lives, but it was structured to where the house was on one side, which also had the office, and then the garage somewhat portion had the printing presses and all those things. And so my uncle, aunts, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa were all working there together. And then on Fridays, Fridays was when our Uncle Ron went and did all the deliveries around town, but they would also order out. So lunch every other day, somebody would cook, like Grandpa would cook. And usually by cook, I mean they like had some type of frozen food that got warmed up in the oven. I guess he made meatloaf and some other things.
He didn't cook frozen food typically. I mean, every once in a while we'd have fish sticks or something, but dude, he had meatloaf, he had hamburgers, he had fish, he had those homemade like scallop potatoes that he'd always make, the fried potatoes.
But weren't those like boxed?
No, he chopped those up, and goulash and all sorts of stuff. Most of that stuff was homemade. I mean, it wasn't like some gourmet homemade, but it was like
I guess I remember chicken nuggets most of the time, and then we had hot dogs. Like he would never get buns; he always used the bread. So you have to cut your hot dog in like half lengthways, and then flip it over, and then put cheese on it, and make like a sandwich. And I used to absolutely hate that.
Like, I didn't like that.
Well, but you got to think, dude. He grew up like in a poor family, so like they did what they did to, like, and especially like you go to the store now. Okay, you buy a loaf of bread, and then on top of that, you're gonna buy 8 hot dog buns, and it's like not all 8 of those are getting eaten, and 5 of them are getting thrown away, and it's like, why not just buy a loaf of bread? All of that will get used.
Yeah, I just don't like how it tasted, dude. I would rather not have hot dogs at all.
Just
than
eat
have
the
to
hot
eat
dog
them that
plain.
way. Yeah, hot dog
I don't know.
sandwich,
I
cheese and
like
ketchup.
But then that brings me to food that Brittany and I would eat that I don't know, everybody thought was crazy and they probably still think is crazy. Because I mean, Grandpa had, so there was always a huge variety box of chips, and when one of the flavors would run out, he'd go get another variety box of chips, instead of just finishing the variety box.
And when we say a variety box, we're talking one of those small boxes that have the small little bags of chips of like 25 to 50 of them inside of it.
Yeah, it was like 50 bags of chips.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then you've got all the pop that you could ever dream of, and there's High C, and there's the Kool-Aid jammers with the twist top that you could drop the pill in that would change color.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, okay, so my point is that there was all the food and all the junk food in the world that you could ever eat. So we put together some crazy concoctions and stuff. I remember Brittany and I, we would take just a piece of bread, and then we would butter the bread, and we'd take the nacho Doritos and put those on the inside and eat it like a sandwich. Dude, that's so good.
That was actually delicious.
You had it? I know, guys.
Oh, yeah. Brittany showed me that. It was super good.
Yeah, it's so good.
I remember having like a turkey sandwich with like mayonnaise, mustard, and then putting like Lay's chips on top of it to like give it a little bit of a crunch or something like that. But I didn't realize you guys were just eating chips. And
oh yeah, some Dorito sandwiches.
Carb city.
Yeah. That's the thing. Growing up, it was all carbs. Like that's almost all we had was carbs. We never really had any types of protein. And when Isaac's talking about all these drinks and juice boxes, my grandpa essentially had a whole refrigerator dedicated towards like Mountain Dew, Sprite, and it was full. Like the whole refrigerator was absolutely full of just pop. And then he had another refrigerator and freezer where he kept all the food. Like,
and he had Powerade, Gatorade. He had Powerade and Gatorade. He had Sprite and 7-Up. He had Coke and Pepsi. Like it was crazy. It's like what the hell? But yeah.
And then there was essentially a drawer as I grew up that started off having like the little dum-dum suckers inside of it. And then it expanded to pretty much anything and everything in your wildest dreams in terms of candies.
Yeah. The one of my favorites was I always love Warheads, but you can't eat a ton of Warheads just because they're a little bit too sour. But after you get past the sour, those things taste so good. Or the Sour Patch straws. Do you remember the Sour Patch straws?
Yeah.
Oh, those
things were good.
Yeah.
I mean, they were before Sour Patch Kids, right? But there was this long straws.
Yeah, or were they called Sour Punches?
Yeah, they might have been Sour Punches. It might have been a completely different company.
Yeah, I think they were. Yeah. But okay, so anyway, so we got past the lawnmowers, and then I always liked driving Grandpa's cars because he'd let me go take stuff and dump stuff in the woods or go do this or go get the mail or whatever. And, you know, I'd run a couple of hot laps without Grandpa knowing, because past about 100 yards past the house, there's woods, and then it drops down into this bowl area where you can't see anything from the house anymore. So I'd always be ripping on his cars down there as fast as I could, just as a kid. And then I couldn't have been maybe 11 or 12, and he got me a car specifically for myself to drive, like just a field car, and I just kind of let loose. And what's wild now that I think about it is, so he's running this business in front of his house, out of his house, you know.
Because how many acres are there? How many acres does Grandpa, like your house and that Mom and Brittany's that now live on there, what does it encompass? How many acres? 27?
So there's 20 acres that the houses, the woods, and all of that stuff are on. There was an additional 20 on the cornfield side. So we had 20 acres on the cornfield side.
Oh, okay.
What I find wild is he's running this business, and this 11, 12-year-old kid has a full-blown car and is just ripping through the front yard, doing burnouts, jumping, and like, that, dude, if I drove up to a place, I'd be like, what the hell is going on? You know? It was no big thing. So it's just crazy.
And it was like pretty busy too. Like there was almost always customers there, because the one portion of it had the printing business, but then during the summer, the full garage was pool chemicals, which was another really good business, because my grandparents actually had a special agreement with Sun, SUN, which is a major chemical manufacturer, and then they were the only one within a certain mile radius that could even carry that brand. And Uncle Ron was pretty well knowledged in pool chemicals and being able to get people's pools back and forth. So it was a good business in the summer. People were busy, like people were always out there, and that's one of the ways we were kind of well known in the community and got to kind of know everybody, because owning a small business in a smaller town, everybody knows everybody, I guess.
Yeah, it's just kind of mind blowing thinking about that now. It's like, well, what if you pulled up to a shop and then all of a sudden you see this little? First off, you never see little kids like driving anymore, or like when Grandpa would let us drive his car in the cemetery at like 11, 12 years old. If you saw that today, you'd be like, dude, what's what?
Yeah.
You know, like. It's crazy, but yeah. I don't know.
And so yeah, like you should be specific. Like, how old were you when Grandpa bought you that car?
Probably like 11 or 12. I was not very old. I was probably just tall enough to like reach the pedals.
And what was your first driving experience like? Do you remember? Like, did he just say, "Hey, Isaac, like, you want to drive," or like, what was that even like?
Well, so there was a few people who let me like drive their cars. I don't think Mom and Dad really ever did, but yeah, I think it started out with Grandpa like saying, "Here, you can sit on my lap and you can steer the wheel," and that's kind of like what I do with my daughter Emily. I let her. So when we go up to Brittany's house, I just let her drive through the grass, and all that I do is run the pedals, and she does all the steering, 100%. She just turned 4. She's been doing it since she was like 3 years old, dude. Like, she's been driving a car except for the pedals. And, but that's kind of how it started with Grandpa. And then Grandpa, you know, would kind of gradually give me a couple more reins and a couple more things to do. Like, okay, now put it in drive, put it in park, put it in reverse, and start it and shut it off. And then it was like, okay, here's the whole thing. And then it just kind of let loose.
And when you think about that, like, the amount of motor skills necessary to really be able to do that, and especially at a young age, like, did you ever feel like your mind was super overwhelmed, but it was also being forced to learn? And do you ever wonder if like that's how became so mechanically inclined, because your ability to be able to, your motor skills have to be super, super intense at such a young age to be able to handle all that?
Maybe. I don't. It's hard to say, dude. Like, what if I didn't go with that stuff? Would I still be in the same position?
Yeah, but like Emily, like she can actually steer it to where you like steer it up there to Brittany's house. It's not like you ever have to like kind of turn it for her. She can steer it.
No. So when we're riding the Razor, there have been a couple of times that she's almost hit Kevin's truck, but I think she's trying to stay away from the barn. Like, so I have to like slam on the brakes. I mean, there was one time that we were like inches away from hitting it, but Like not his new truck, the one that's been sitting out back. But
okay.
there's been a couple of times like that. It's just on like that specific spot. She's like almost hit his truck. So I'm not sure. Maybe she's not paying attention because there's like something that's catching her eye. But other than that, yeah, dude, I let her drive out in the field, and we'll drive through the cornfield. And what she loves to do, I hate it, but she sees me do donuts every once in a while, and she'll turn the wheel as hard as she can. And we're not doing donuts because I'm not going to go fast enough, but we're just doing circle after circle. And I mean, I'll let it go for a while, but then it's like after a couple minutes, it's like, all right, like I'm getting dizzy. This isn't fun. Like let's just go somewhere. But I mean, we've rutted up the cornfield from just driving for like, I don't know, probably like 6-8 inches deep, just a big hole of a circle that we have to drive out of because she loves it.
Which is interesting because I wonder if in her mind she sees herself doing what you're doing, even though she's not able to understand that you're not going fast enough. But she has seen you do it, and she essentially thinks that what she's doing is the exact same, and so it looks cool, like when people are watching it.
It could be, and so I've got a sporty BMW, and one time I've taken her out, and I just kind of took her on the back roads back here down to the corner, and I did a donut right at the stop sign, and she absolutely loved it. And now, like, she calls it my burnout car, and she just loves doing donuts. Then I'll do some in the driveway sometimes, and she just loves donuts. It's her thing.
She likes being in the car or watching it from the outside.
Being in the car. The first time that I did it, so I was just going down to the road, and I was going to turn around, and I was like, well, I've got her in here. Let's see how she likes this. Well, I did that donut, and I forgot that I didn't put her lap buckle on, and she like slammed over into the right side of the car, and she's kind of looked at me like stunned, but then she was like, oh yeah, that was sweet. And I was like, oh man, I should put on your belt, huh?
Which is interesting because we went to Disney with Emily and we rode some of the kiddier rides. And then there was that one roller coaster that we did. And we asked her if she wanted to do it again. And she's like, no, I don't want to do that one again.
Yeah. Well,
so it must have had to do with the drop versus the spinning around.
What was weird about that is the Seven Dwarfs ride was really similar to that. I don't know. Maybe she just, I don't know if she was sleeping before that or maybe just not in the mood.
Yeah.
It could be. I don't know. Most of the time she's kind of an adrenaline junkie. It seems like me, where she likes doing stuff like that.
Well, I mean, you've given her a lot of adrenaline at a super young age, dude.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, she's experienced things that most kids aren't going to experience until possibly ever, like doing donuts. I'm sure that there's people out there who have never done donuts.
Right.
Growing up in Michigan makes it a lot easier when we get the patches of ice and stuff like that, so you don't have to ruin your tires to be able to do donuts and stuff. But, yeah. All right, so you have a car that Grandpa bought you at 11 years old, and you kind of went into the stories about how you were driving it around on the field. And so let's talk about how it was unregistered, didn't have a license plate, and when your first experience driving it out on the road with nobody knowing was, and share some of those stories.
Well, so when I would drive Grandpa's vehicles, those were all registered, which, I mean, as a kid, you don't know what registration is or anything like that. I mean, if it drives down the road, it drives down the road, you know, like, I mean, I would stay away from like highways and stuff like that where I knew that cops would be, but I would drive his vehicles down on the road, and I definitely wasn't 14 years old. I was probably like maybe 12, maybe 13. And I knew some kids that rode the school bus. So one day I was out kind of dinking around, and I'd get home way before, you know, the school bus would drop these kids off that are out on Sweet Lake Road or Lafayette or anything like that.
And that's because Mom and Dad would go to school and pick us up and bring us back. So that's why you got, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then, so I'd see the school bus coming, and I mean, I'd go ripping past there, just kind of like to show off. And, but people wouldn't know who you were if you just went ripping by this way. So then I'd like do a burnout or something. And then I'd turn around and I'd jet past the other way and just, yeah. And there was one time when I was a little bit older, probably like a year later or something, that one of my friends actually called me and said, "Hey, you should probably not do that because the school bus driver just called the cops on you." So I went to the field really quick, and then I went and parked it so I wouldn't have any trouble that day. But yeah.
And then what about the time that you were like riding it out there and Uncle Ron saw you?
Yeah, so Grandpa's car maxed out at about 100 miles an hour, and I had it about every bit of that going down Lafayette towards town, because sometimes you just get tired of seeing the same roads, so you got to extend a little bit further.
For sure.
And so for those of you that don't know, in Michigan, a lot of just 2-lane roads. So he's going down single lane highway that went right out in front of the business. Speed limit's 55, and then these back roads are right around 50. And then we're talking like back roads that are gonna have potholes and they're just unstable roads and stuff like that. So
So I was jetting down one of the roads that's behind the house here, and well, I guess it was actually towards my uncle's house, and I passed him. I didn't see it. I mean, I was going so fast that I didn't pay attention to who was back there.
You like actually went around him and passed him, or you just
I passed him going opposite ways of each other. So I mean, I wasn't paying attention. But he gets back. What I'm told is he got back to the house, to the business where my parents are working and Grandpa's working, and obviously he works. And he gets there and he tells my mom, I believe he told my mom, he says, "Well, I saw Grandpa's station wagon." I was like, "Where the hell is he going so fast?" And then come to find out Grandpa was home, and Isaac was supposed to be dumping chemicals or something. And so they kind of did the math and figured out it was me. But I mean, I don't even think I really got a slap on the wrist for it. It's, I guess nobody really minded that much. So, but yeah.
I mean, could you imagine being that bus driver dropping kids off, and then you see this car drive by at this insane speed, and you're like, "Oh, this asshole!" And then they turn around, and you come and you see it's like a little kid, like you're dropping off. It's like,
yeah, that's like a kid that should be on the bus.
Yeah. It's like, what is going on?
The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So after the car, my brother Josh, he's 4 years older than me. Him and I got together because one of his friends had a dirt bike, and they were kind of done with the dirt bike. They didn't really have space for it or anything. So I figured, I've driven the cars and the lawnmowers and everything. Let's try out a dirt bike. Man, that was so hard to learn. A bicycle's easy, but I didn't even know how to drive a manual at this point. So you're trying to learn how to ride a dirt bike, learning the clutch, the throttle, the brakes, and everything all together, and trying to stay stable. I mean, I fell off of that thing hundreds of times. It was an enduro bike, so I had the turn signals, the headlights, the brake lights, and everything. Those were busted off within a week. I mean, every one of them was gone. It was like, but I finally got the hang of it, and I'd be riding that thing. And the other thing was, like, I never wore a helmet doing anything. I know dirt bike, car, go-karts, nothing. Never wore a helmet. But yeah, my mom and dad never said anything about it either. I guess they wanted me to be a little tougher.
Wait, this was a dirt bike that they bought for you, or you got it from a friend, or what?
No, I saved up and bought it from one of Josh's friends. So yeah, I asked mom and dad for a go-kart every Christmas, and I brought this up until dad died. I brought this up that I was pissed that mom and dad never got me a go-kart because I asked for one every single Christmas, and dad said, "Oh, no, I don't remember that." And mom says the same thing, and it's like, dude, you guys made us make Christmas lists. I put one on there every single year, and I never got a go-kart. Like, oh, we don't remember that. But no, so they never... From my memory, mom and dad never bought me like a motor vehicle or anything. No dirt bikes or go-karts or anything like that. So I bought that dirt bike by myself and kind of figured it out. And then it was four-wheelers and so on and so on.
And then when you were buying these, are you like teaching yourself to work on them, or you're just at the age where you're just kind of saving up all your lawn mowing money and buying dirt bikes and stuff. And
So what's weird is when I was younger, I was so good at modifying things. Like when things would break, I didn't really have any money, so I wouldn't go to the parts store and get a new part. I would cobble something to make something work. Like I remember, like one time with the dirt bike, it had battery terminals. So I believe it had electric start. Yeah, it had electric start. So one of the bolts fell out because it came loose, and it's not just like a regular, you just screw a new bolt in. Well, it's got a weird square nut that goes on the bottom side. We didn't have anything that would fit in it, so like I couldn't figure anything out. So I ended up like going inside, taking a bread tie off of one of Grandpa's like bread bags, and I used that to like hold my battery. There's one time I broke the kickstand off, and the kickstand has to be up for the bike to start because it's got this little switch that it hits up against. So the switch would never hit because the kickstand was broke off. And I don't remember, I think I zip tied and duct taped like the switch shut so like it would start every time whenever I wanted it to start. Just a young kid figuring that stuff out. There was no YouTube really or anything like that to figure out why won't my bike start, or you just figure it out. Thinking about it now is like older, man. It's just crazy that I could come up with that stuff.
Probably got it from Grandpa and all of his duct tape fixing everything, and just handyman solutions there.
Duct tape, WD-40, maybe a little bit of glue.
That's all you need. That's all you really need.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does take a little bit of a thought process to be able to figure those things out.
Yeah.
So what transitioned you into that to like having a passion to work on cars, and how did you like transfer into that?
So one thing I remember like as really young, so I must have been like 4 or 5. One year, Mom and Dad got me an RC car. It was a monster truck. It was actually like really sweet. I don't know if you remember which one I'm talking about. It was about a foot tall, maybe like 2 foot long. Like, it was a pretty big deal. Like I'm sure it was like a few $100s back then. But so Edie was our godmother who lived across the road from us at where we lived, our parents' actual house. And I remember her telling this story that she said that I took the batteries out of it and I went and I washed them off because I thought like it was going to make the car go faster, and I'd like take them apart and try to make it go faster. Like I think I was just born with like I got to take stuff apart, fix stuff, make it faster, make it better, bigger. It's just ever since a kid, I think.
Interesting.
Did you have issues with it or anything, or you were just trying to modify it?
Yeah, it still works to this day.
You still have it?
I just wanted it to go faster. So that's not the way you make it go faster.
Right, but like, how did you start working on cars though?
So the first car that Grandpa got me, I would break that and start fixing it every time that it broke. Because like I said, I mean, I wasn't just putzing around in a field. I was doing like 55 miles an hour in a bumpy, rutted field. I was jumping these cars over hills. Like I was just beating the hell out of these cars. So obviously they're not going to last, right? And this was like a daily occurrence. Like every day I was at least driving these cars and beating on them every day. So stuff breaks. The exhaust, snaps off, and then it's dragging, so you gotta go rip that off. Now the car's really loud. That's cool. More people are watching me now. So now I rip past the school bus, they definitely hear me. It wasn't really because I wanted to do it. It was because like I can't drive it unless I fix it. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. Like I want to be a race car driver, but guess what? This car's not going to fix itself.
Race car's broke.
Yeah. So let's get out the fixer.
And it was like a perfect setup too, because the other thing is that my mom and dad working at this business, my grandpa had a gas tank that actually had a gas pump there. So my mom, my dad, my uncle, my aunt, they essentially had this gas truck that would just come to like a gas station. It would come and pump the gas into the ground, and you had essentially free gas that you could just have nonstop, right?
Yeah, you just have to go inside and turn the switch on, which was just a breaker.
Right.
Which I think there for a long time, they actually never shut it off until maybe somebody stole gas one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. Because there for a long time, you never had to go flip the breaker on. It was just always on.
Oh, wow. When I was a kid, we always had to turn it on. It was always off. It never got left on like that.
Maybe I'm not remembering it then correctly. I thought there was a point that we didn't have to. Maybe it was because I just left it on and forgot about it. Like, hey, the gas pump's on.
You were the only one using it 3 times a day.
Yeah. It's just like you would think, oh, okay, this kid, like at some point he's going to run out of gas. Well, how's he going to pay for gas? Well, that wasn't an issue because we had a pretty much nonstop gas, which I remember Ron like being upset about a lot of these things. Being, Dad, like you're spending way too much money on all this stuff. Like going back to the Friday things, like on Fridays, Ron would go get lunch for all of us. So during summer vacation, we would all be getting lunch. And like Isaac was bringing up, Grandpa would be like, oh, well, where you guys want to go? And then Ron would have like 3 or 4 places. Like, Dad, I don't want to go to 3 or 4 places. He's like, oh, come on. It's all right. Like, Uncle Ron would be so pissed because he's the one doing deliveries and he'd have to be the one sitting in all of those lines.
Oh yeah, right at noon too. Like it was definitely noon when he was getting those lines. Especially McDonald's. Like ever since I've been a kid, McDonald's has been the longest lines ever for some reason. It seemed like we were going to McDonald's a lot, and always having to wait for that one.
McDonald's, Burger King, right next to each other. Wendy's. Yeah.
Well, it was always Grandpa standing up for his grandkids no matter what, pretty much over anybody, especially when he like rented out to that house up there and Isaac would come rutting out the yard and tearing it up when they were, I don't know, in the middle of the night or something. They come out and they tell Grandpa and he'd be like, you go back inside. And then Isaac just gets to go back up there and rip the yard up.
Yeah, I remember one time specifically, there was a guy and his dad who lived up there, and they acted like they could tell who to do what and stuff, and really they were just renting the house because they had $10,000 mowers or something or another. But anyway, yeah, I think it was the first time I ever heard Grandpa use the F word. I went up there, and it was me, Josh, and then a couple of our friends. We all had 4-wheelers, and we were just doing donuts and popping wheelies and making all sorts of noise. I'm sure they were probably just inside, trying to watch TV or something. We're just like loud as hell, like right outside their windows. And it couldn't have been a couple minutes later, one of them jumped into their truck, and they didn't just take the driveway and come down to the house. They plowed through Grandpa's yard, which it doesn't matter. It's like we drive our through there anyway. But they plowed through the yard, and then they came yelling at Grandpa. And Grandpa was like, you don't effing tell me what to, and you don't have to yell at those kids and this and that. I'm pretty sure that was the first time I've ever heard Grandpa say the F word. But yeah, always standing up for us. You couldn't do anything wrong if you were an Abbs.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
Get them all hopped up on sugar and then just let them go raise hell.
And not watch them too. Just leave them unsupervised.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, share the story about so there were these cornfields that were right next door. My grandpa would lease those out for essentially a company to come and do seed corn. And then you guys were how old that one time where you guys would go and pick mulberries or something, right? And you start throwing them at the semi and getting them all over the semis and stuff, right?
Well, so what used to happen is, so we were probably around like maybe 10 to 13 years old, and they used to harvest the fields at night. So they'd come pick corn and beans and everything at night. So we're talking sundown. So most of this stuff that we would do, we would take popeberries and we just walnuts, popeberries, and we just litter their trucks. So like when they pulled out of there, they wouldn't see it. But like it looked like a paintball gun just went like all over their truck, and they never noticed it until the next day. But it's too late. What are they gonna do now? We'd do everything from that, and then like sometimes they'd actually leave their trucks overnight and stuff. It was the worst idea because then we'd get really creative and we'd get dog poop and stuff like that. And like put it on the steps of their semi truck. The funniest part though is like that's not even the funniest part. It was so we had two dogs, two bigger dogs, a Rottweiler and a Lab, and we would take their poop with a shovel and we'd go over there and like put it on their footstep of their semi truck, and the whole time we wouldn't get anything that was like old. We'd get like fresh like steam and turd, and the whole time my cousin Craig has like the weakest stomach ever, and he's just. the whole way over there, the whole way back, just about ready to puke his guts out. Like that was probably the best part of it.
But wasn't there a story where when you were younger, one of the guys caught you doing it? He asked you a question, and you're like, "Yeah," but you like misheard him or something?
Yeah. So this time it was just Brittany and myself. Josh and Craig were either too old or they just weren't around this time. It was in the middle of the day. Like it was just dumb to begin with. Like at nighttime, you're not going to be seen. But in the middle of the day, Brittany and I go out there and we're just chucking stuff at their trucks. And then one of the guys sees it and he sees us just like looking out the back door. Like he sees two kids just sitting there staring out the back door. And what the guy said was, "Do you want to wash it now?" And I thought he said, "Do you want to watch now?" So I go like this. And then Brittany and I just run back inside. Well, I was kind of scared shitless because I thought, all right, this guy's going to come around the front. He's going to tell mom, and mom's going to have my butt. But the dude he never said anything about it. He just went on his way. But I think that was probably one of the last times that we did it, though.
Yeah, but weren't you guys throwing something in the road and then like raccoons came out and tried to get it the one time and then
So we'd have some wild times. So Grandpa, from ever since I can remember, he had at least at bare minimum a big box top that was full of nothing but like fireworks. So you'd have bottle rockets and these little ones that look like houses that would go and they go straight up and they were red and green. So we'd take a good one was we'd take food and we'd throw food in the middle of the road for people to run over. And we never really put two and two together. But yeah, one time we went out there and threw a bunch of food in the road. And then the next morning we came out, there was like 3 dead raccoons because they were trying to eat the food and they got smoked by a car. We'd also take the big packing peanuts that are like, if they're almost like a balloon. If you squeeze them real hard, they'll pop. We'd take those and throw those in the road. We'd light fireworks and throw fireworks in the road. There was a lot of unsupervision going on for some pretty young kids. We were all pretty wild, to tell you the truth. It's not just me. I might have antagonized it, but we were all doing it. So,
I mean, thinking of that, it's just picturing it in my head is just these teenage kids taking grandpa's food like sandwiches, bags of chips, whatever, and they're just going out and throwing it in the middle of the road just for the satisfaction of watching it get run over.
Yeah, just being wasteful.
Yeah.
Well, wait. In our defense, most of the time we would use expired food because grandpa had a ton of expired food. That takes me to another point. A game that we would play as kids, Fear Factor was a big thing when we were growing up. And we would, first off, we'd mix food together. But on top of that, sometimes we'd mix expired food together, like expired mayonnaise. It was kind of like a spin the wheel and you get what you get. Oh. And Craig was also involved in that game. And a lot of times he'd just be like, "I'm not playing, dude. I'm not playing." Unless he got like Sprite and Jello or something like that. Like something easy. But a lot of the times he'd end up with just terrible ones. But he just wouldn't even try it because,
And you would, and Brittany and Josh, you guys would all eat it?
For the most part, yeah. Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But it was, you get bored.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Start doing dumb stuff. You've already played all the video games and sports, especially like you've got these 3 other kids that you're hanging out with all the time, you're gonna do everything. And like, okay, it's a cold day out, like it's snowing. What are we gonna do now? We can't go play baseball. We've already played all the video games. Like, let's play Fear Factor.
Yeah, and it was never to the point where it's like bring a new kid over and it's like, oh, let's play this game we call throw food in the road and watch a get run over. It's like you've already been there, already done that.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I remember. Yeah, and the other thing was it like even with the fireworks, like they were unsupervised. I lit the yard on fire twice. Like one time, we had a fire pit that was where my mom's house is now, and it was a really windy day. But I was kind of a pyro, like I like lighting stuff on fire. We'd have huge fires, and Dad said no, and Grandpa said no, and Ron said no. But I mean, I know how to use a match, so I just went out and I started it anyway. And it started the cornfield on fire. So Grandpa, Dad, and Ron are out there with shovels and buckets of water. And the other time was I took a firework and so when you take fireworks, especially the ones that you're supposed to set on the ground and they just go straight up and they spin a lot. So when you light those and then you hold them for a second until it's about ready to go off and then you throw it, it gives it more of a game where you don't know where the hell that thing's going to go.
Yeah.
I had a couple of them like charge me down where I thought I was going to get smoked by a firework, but there was one that went down and it was super dry outside and it just dragged across the grass and it lit like, I don't know, probably a 20 yard strip of dry grass on fire. So yeah.
And then you put it out?
I think Grandpa did.
He ran inside and said, the car's on fire.
No, I think Ron was still there too. And I told him that somebody drove by and threw a firework out the window is what I told him.
Yeah.
Ron knew it was bullshit, but Grandpa, I don't know if he believed it or he just said, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I don't think it was very hard to Grandpa was very gullible. I don't know if it was actually him being gullible or just him trying to put on that mask of being gullible just because you're his grandkid. I don't know if he actually believed any of it or, yeah.
No, Grandpa definitely wasn't stupid. He knew what was going on. And like even when Ron would tell him what's going on, what's really going on, he'd still act like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he
because,
wouldn't do that.
I was swearing at such a young age, and like, I mean, sure, Grandpa would be like, hey, but there was never like any repercussions of it. Like, nothing would really ever. I'll tell your parents, but then.
Yeah.
Well, mainly because he knew this, is that he knew that if you got in trouble, that you probably weren't going to be allowed back out at the house or you weren't going to be able to come out there. And so you were spending the night with him. And so he was going to be lonely. And that was part of his enjoyment of being able to be around his grandkids.
Yeah. And if I don't go, then Brittany and Josh probably aren't going to go. And that means Craig's not going to go. So then, yeah, he's just going to be by himself.
Right. And then also oftentimes if like Grandpa would like tell on us, like Mom and Dad would get mad for him because they always would feel like Grandpa was singling like us out or something like that. And so he was just like, well, this is like a lose-lose scenario. like what am I going to do?
Mad at me.
Yeah, Mom and Dad are pissed at him. Like we're pissed at him. Like what? Okay, this just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So when did you start working on cars? You started with Mom's dad. Like how, at some point you went over there or something, right?
So once I got my license, so my mom's dad, he was a mechanic, truck driver, tow truck driver, all that stuff. I always found it really interesting what he did, but he was 45 minutes away. So it was never really feasible for me until I got my license. He helped me actually get a car. And then I drove to his house. I think it was twice a weekend. I would drive there every Saturday and every Sunday. We'd work on stuff. He'd teach me how to do stuff. And I'd do everything from like extending semi-frames to helping him paint this truck that he got for a deal. Yeah, just pretty much anything and everything.
But like, how did you build a relationship with mom's dad, because like none of us other kids really even had a relationship with him. Like I don't know if I ever like spoke to him for probably more than like 5 minutes.
I think it's maybe because we had similar interests. And maybe like Christmas one year, I said, "Oh yeah, I want to do this," or I heard him talking about something, and I kind of like put myself in there. Because I mean, I think maybe he invited me over. I would assume, and he said, "Oh, you want to come help me do this or help me work on stuff?" And sometimes I'd just go over there, and we wouldn't even work on anything. We'd just go out to eat. So, the one thing that I wish that I really would have retained is more of the painting side. I don't really have the patience for it. I think that's my problem. Because I mean, he was a really good painter.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Like in terms of like doing lines and stuff, or just like what?
Like painting cars.
No, I know, but like, are you like the whole process of like, because what is it? You have to sand them down first, and like that whole process you're talking about.
Yeah, so you have to sand them and then wet sand them and block them if you need to, and Bondo and all that stuff, and then you paint, and then you sand again or wet sand, and then you paint again, and yeah, it's just I've tried doing stuff, but I'm not very good at it. So, but I mean, obviously, it's too late to learn that from him now. But
and you said he was really good at it.
Yeah, from what I remember, but. I mean, really anything without a run, and it was good to me. But yeah, I mean, okay. I believe that's probably where our Uncle Brett how to paint from, but I can't say that for sure.
Did he have like his own paint room?
Well, he just painted in the shop.
Okay, so he didn't have some enclosed area where you could actually.
There was no booth or anything.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it would get oversprayed, but it was a really big shop, so. I mean, it would be light overspray. You're talking the closest thing to you is probably 20 foot away, maybe.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I mean, it was a pretty big shop.
Yeah, and that wasn't even the other side. That wasn't even the full thing because there was still the additional part that he had on the other side.
Because I remember on Halloween, we would go over there he had this great big like hay ride and stuff, and like great big cookout. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember that many of them. I do remember though. That was the first time I ever drank a beer. Dad let me have his beer. Like it was like this much that was left of it. But Dad handed. He was like, "Here, you want some?" And there was the spit left in it pretty much. And I said, "Hey, Mom, look!" And then I right over. How'd you do that? You know, like, why'd you show your mom that?
Yeah.
Wait, do you remember going to him, Jake?
I remember going to one or two. I don't very vaguely. I remember it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't really remember going that many times. I think we just went a couple of times. Do you remember a bunch of them, Chad?
I would say I thought maybe 4 or 5. I think it used to be almost a yearly thing, but I thought as we got older, we didn't really go to them. So that's why I was surprised that Jake had remembered, because I thought like after high school, we'd kind of stopped going over there to him.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, we really never went over to his house for much at all.
No. And that's why I was trying to understand like how you built that relationship kind of outside of the rest of us grandkids. Like,
I think it was just because I had an interest, and maybe I said something about it, and then he's like, "Yeah, sure, come on over." And then from there, I mean, we were pretty good buddies.
You actually pursued it, because I would say that that's another thing that stands out about you is that you're always willing to put yourself out there, and I think it has to go back to that approach that you don't really care what other people think about you, so you'll put yourself out there. And I don't think rejection is really a big of an obstacle for you as it is for most people.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. If he would have been like, no, then I would have just, whatever, I'll try something else. I do think that I was always looking for an in on how to get more into cars. And like, even today, like I'm still always looking for an in. There's like specialty things that I would like to learn how to do, like racing. Building race engines or building race transmissions or building race stuff. Like I have a very good grasp on everything that I do already. I would like to add on to it and be building like high performance stuff would be something that I would like to do. I've always wanted to get into that, but I haven't found the right in or the right person to ask that I actually have a relationship with to just be like, hey, can I get in on that? Like, teach me how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in terms of the automotive industry as it is, you're pretty well versed in the, what would you say, the traditional forms of automotive. And now you're talking more about high performance, or like grandpa, I would say stretching semis. That's something that's very, very unique and like niche in itself as well, right?
Yeah, you don't see very many semis that are stretched anymore.
Oh, really?
Not around here anyway. Usually, if you see one, it's going to be a super nice truck. But I don't know. I see thousands of semis drive by the house, and none of them are very nice. They're just kind of beat up. They're Walmart trucks or Amazon trucks, where they're not really built to be like, hey, look at this is my pride and joy. This is my truck. This is a cool truck. A lot of people, maybe a lot of people don't own their own semis anymore. Maybe that's what it is. But
yeah, but I would say again, you're living on a 1-lane highway. I think if you went and sat out over there by the toll road, I remember when we used to like go eat at the toll road and stuff like that. I think you'd see a lot more of those, because I remember when I was working in Michigan in the office supply industry, there were a couple of places that I delivered to that specifically stretched
semi-trucks.
semis. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they look cool. But yeah, that's one of those things where, like, if you wanted to get into that market, that would be a cool market. I'm sure it's a good money maker. But you have to prove that you're the go-to guy. So I think doing that would be a hard thing to do. Like, becoming the guy, like, that's the frame stretching guy. You go to Isaac when you need a frame stretch. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be the difficult part, especially in like what you said, like such a niche market. Like, it's not like everybody needs a frame stretch.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's all about building your name. And I think, last week, Jake, we talked like about social media, maybe the harms of it. And I think that that's the one thing that's created a huge opportunity for people who do have maybe that small niche down to where they can share that on social media. And it's really, really cool to be able to see people do that and be good at it. And I think that's one way that you can really broaden your target market is with social media when you have such a specific audience or target market.
Yeah, I could see that.
But when it comes to like the automotive industry, can you share like how you got passionate about it and how you like, I guess, like what it is that makes you feel like you have purpose?
I don't know. So when I tear something apart, I just like, I think maybe it's the learning that I like doing. I also like doing it just because it's like, I can't sit still for very long. My hands have to be moving. I have to be doing something. I have to be fiddling with something. But so when you take something apart and you see it from the outside and you're like, okay, this does this, but how does it do it? And then you look inside of it and you see these two gears that lock together, that turn it, or a motor that does this. And then you understand it. It's just kind of like, oh, I get it now. Like, you kind of understand another way of thinking because you didn't think like that before, like how to create things almost.
Right.
Like,
and that's the one thing I've noticed actually about you and Jake both as we've done the virtual reality game, especially when it's came to the escape rooms, which I've really, really enjoyed playing with you guys, is because how your minds work, just being able to see how your minds work. They work a little bit differently than mine. And I always am trying to bring out the structure of like, well, this plus this must mean this, where you guys are just able to see, well, how does this fit? How does this work? How does this do this? And I'm the one always trying to piece all the things together and be like, well, what does this relate to? How does this relate? And you guys are just trying to figure out how it works, which is very interesting. And that's something I'm preparing for this podcast that I was thinking about, is that it seems like in the automotive industry, it's usually one of two things that people are passionate about. One is problem solving and being able to figure out how to solve complex problems. And two has to do with the ability to be able to help people. Because the thing that you're helping people with is one of their most valuable possessions that they could ever have throughout the course of their life. And maybe it's not this one, but it's the next one. I mean, it's their home and their automobile, and you're the one that's connecting and helping them be able to enjoy that value.
Yeah, I see that. I do really enjoy helping people. So when their vehicle comes and it's broken, but most people don't seem that appreciative when they get a vehicle repaired. Like, it's not like, oh my gosh, you're such a lifesaver, like that. It's like paying your electric bill. Like, I don't want to pay my electric bill. Like, nobody's like happy about paying their electric bill. It's another pain, but like sometimes what is really beneficial and nice is I'll get a really big thank you from people because they're like, I went to the dealership and they told me this was going to be $2,000 and you just saved me so much money. That makes me feel good because it's like I'm not giving it away by any means, but at the same time I'm saving everybody a lot of money also, and that feels really good. Or what I've even had too is I sometimes I'll just be sitting watching TV. I've had it happen a few times, and I've seen there was a lady who drove by. Something was dragging underneath her car, and she stopped like right in front of the mailbox. So I go out there and I say, "Hey, like, do you need some help?" And she's like, "Yeah, I don't really know what's going on." So I said, "Well, just bring it over here, and I'll take a look at it." And so I lifted it up, and it was just an underbody shield that was hanging. So I just took a couple minutes and just disconnected it, said, "Here, it's not really necessary." She was like super appreciative. She's like, "I don't know what I would have done. Like, I'm all the way from Illinois or something like that." Yeah. So fixed her up, and she was like, "Oh, what do I owe you?" And I was like, "You don't owe me anything. Like, I was just trying to help. Like, I saw a lady in distress. Like, I was just helping you out." Mm-hmm. So then she takes off, and it couldn't have been a week later. I got a letter in the mail, and she said, "I'm so thankful," and like just a long worded. It had to be at least 2 paragraphs just thanking me, and I think she gave me like $50.
So she took the time to write down your address and somehow figured out how to get your address.
Yeah. So when she was leaving, she was sitting at the end of the driveway. And Mary and I, my wife, were talking like, we're like, what the hell is she doing? She was like, it had to be like at least 5 minutes. And we're like, what the hell is she doing? I guess she was staring at the mailbox to get the address. So,
or she could have been trying to look it up on Google Maps, and because it wasn't well listed, trying to figure out what the actual address was for that or something. Huh, that's interesting, dude. I didn't know that story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had a couple like that. Yeah, it's weird that not that many people break down in front of the house, but
yeah, you just brought up a really good point, right? And that a lot of people aren't as appreciative of the repair work. And I think, as we go through life, like sitting here, like my Florida Powered electric bill. Yeah, I wish that I didn't have to pay that. And I don't really take appreciation of being able to be like, oh, thanks for giving me electricity so that I could use, my oven and stove. But these are things that we have to have in order to really have enjoyment in life and to be able to suit our needs or to be able to get us to work, to be able to provide for our families. And it's interesting to me how we've kind of normalized all these things in society today because we've gotten so technology driven to where we don't appreciate some of these things that help us to be able to, I guess, just live.
Yeah, for sure. Like your cell phone bill, electricity, plumbing, trash, all that. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, it's just another bill to pay, right?
Right. Whereas I think when people have more appreciation for their vehicle, like there's obvious some people who have saved up a lot of money and they really enjoy cars. There's some people who just don't really care for a car. A car is a vehicle to get them from point A to point B, and that's it. And they don't really enjoy the speed or the looks or all those things. But it's those people that do, who, when something does get fixed or it runs smoother and they can feel it, you can see that enjoyment that they get from it, right?
Yeah, especially like somebody's had an engine that's been misfiring for the last 2 years, and it's just such a nuisance. But now at this point, you don't even notice it anymore, right? And then you take it to a mechanic, and they say, oh, this is what it is. Let's fix it. And they fix it. And they're like, oh my gosh, my car hasn't ran this good in 2 years. Like, this is awesome. But yeah, I think maybe one of the big things is sometimes when things do get fixed, the person doesn't understand what is being fixed or even notice, like sometimes with the leaks, like you're not going to notice a leak, right? Unless you have a concrete driveway or something like that. So sometimes you're not even going to notice that stuff. But I would say the main problem that I see is people get one problem and they're like, well, either I can't afford it right now or I've got more important things to do, and they don't take care of it. Well, it kind of gets pushed to the wayside. And then the next time they come in, well, guess what? Now you got two problems. And then they're like, oh, shoot. And then it's three problems. And then once you get to a certain point, then it's just like, hell with it. I'm not fixing anything. Like, just do the bare minimum. I'm not fixing. Because, I mean, you've went from a $500 bill to a $5,000 bill, and now your car's not even worth it. You know what I mean? Sometimes.
And are you saying that happened because they didn't fix the first issue and that first issue led to all these other issues, or it's just an accumulation of the time that it took and then things just happen and you just have issue after issue and now you're at that $5,000 bill?
Not specifically. I mean, sometimes things are related to, like, hey, if you're not going to fix something, likely there is going to be something that's eventually going to follow it out. But the thing is, like, if you don't take care of that one thing, there will be something else that goes wrong. Cars aren't made that great. Like, they just aren't. How many times can you go in for a service without them telling you, oh, now you need an air filter. Oh, now you need wiper blades. Oh, now you need a transmission flush. Now you need tires. You need brakes. You need whatever. I mean, you always need an oil change, right? And you can't go in for probably more than 3 services without needing something. So then that's what I'm saying is, like, it just kind of adds up and adds up and adds up. And you're not going to a shop or a repair shop once a week, once a month. What is it? Maybe once every 3 or 4 months. So
oil change.
By that time, you kind of push it off. You forgot all about it. Well, you either didn't save up funds or you just kind of don't care. And maybe you'll fix it next time. But yeah, once it gets to be that laundry list of stuff, then the car just never turns around.
Would you say that mechanics have given your industry a bad rap?
Yeah, definitely.
Because, like, me personally, like, I have a really hard time, like, trusting anybody. And I'm not sure if it's just because of, like, mechanics, but it's how they've spoken to me previously and how it's like, I'll go to, like, a tire shop and it's always, oh, well, I need this and I need this. And, like, dude, I just had that fixed, like brake pads. It's like, you're telling me I need brake pads when I just got brake pads. It's like, oh, well, no, that was for a different car. It's like, what do you mean? Like, how is this possible? Like, I get it that places get busy and stuff, but, like,
yeah, definitely. There are. So let's just put it this way. I've been doing this for professionally about 15 years. I've worked at maybe 8 shops. Out of those 8 shops, I've probably met maybe like 8 people, 6 or 7, 8 people that are, like, good, wholesome mechanics that they're not trying to rip you off. They're trying to do quality work. They know what they're doing. Yeah, good quality mechanics. There's a lot of bad mechanics out there.
And, like, so out of those 8, how many mechanics have you worked with in those 15 years?
Usually it's about 20 per place, so 160 or so.
That many mechanics, dude.
Yeah, it's not a very good ratio.
And what would you say you do to try to separate yourself from the competition and, like, have people, like, let their guards down? So, like, for me in the leasing industry, right, like, people are already afraid of being sold. So the one thing that I try to do is create laughter and try to get people to, I guess, not just believe me, but to let their guards down to where we're just comfortable. Like, what would you say you do to try to do that?
So here through the house, if somebody's skeptical of what the repair is or anything like that, I absolutely encourage them to come look at the vehicle with me. And I can show them exactly what is going on. I've had that a couple of times where people are kind of skeptical. They're like, well, I don't know what that is, and that's kind of expensive. So I say, okay, well, let's just resolve this, because I don't want you thinking that I'm doing something shady or anything like that. So I say, you come with me and we'll look at the vehicle together, and I can visibly show you, like, hey, this is what's wrong, or this is what's leaking, or this is making noise, or something like that. And along that lines, that seems to help a lot. And the other thing is, you can tell when somebody's full of crap. With me, I'm talking directly to the customers, out of the house all the time, through the dealership, maybe 25-30% of the time, but that's because we have service advisors. So it's not really 99% of mechanics. They're not going to call you on your phone and say, hey, could you better describe this issue, or talk to you about it. They're going to have the service advisor do it. And then you're playing telephone. And I mean, if you remember the game Telephone when you were a kid, you'd have a message that was just completely upside down, inside out, backwards. It's not even close to what you actually said. So that's kind of why I do that direct communication. You and I can talk. And the other thing is, like, service advisors, they're not mechanics. So when the mechanic is relaying a message, sometimes we use bigger words and we don't understand that we're doing it. We don't notice that we're doing it. Or we use words that people don't understand, and we expect people to understand it. And you're dealing with multiple levels of education on how a car works and everything like that. So you have to realize that, and you really have to put it in layman's terms sometimes too. So if I'm telling the service advisor who doesn't understand cars something that's above their head, and they tell it to a customer, then it's already been confused beyond belief, and then you get pissed off customers, and then it just turns into a bad experience over just, you should have just went directly to the customer,
And then, so what would you say are the biggest mistakes that consumers make, that vehicle owners make, in how they maybe maintain their car, how they take care of their car? Like, what are the biggest things that we do that cause us issues and cause us to, like, pay more out of pocket?
I guess I would say probably, I wouldn't say paying more out of pocket. You're going to pay the same amount out of pocket. But I would say, like, that stacking up repairs. When a repair's needed to be done, take care of it. Don't push it off. Don't make it next week, next month, next year. I mean, if you need to make it next month, whatever, something like that. But don't stack them up, because then I don't think most people notice that they're doing it, but that's when you start to quit caring about your car. You care a little bit less. Your car's in really nice shape, right? And then they say, oh, well, you need to spend this on it. And then you're like, it's not in that great shape. And then you're like, oh, well, now is my car even worth it? That's kind of where cars get let go. And before you know it, you're buying a new car and getting in a ton more debt just because you didn't want to spend the money to keep up on maintenance.
So oftentimes when you see people refusing maintenance or deciding not to get something repaired, it's not usually on a newer car. You feel that they've lost interest in that car, and that's why they doesn't have maybe a special meaning to them or as much attachment anymore, and that's where they're kind of just like letting it go.
Yeah, maybe that, or maybe people have the expectation where they think, well, I mean, if I can make it another couple of years without doing this repair, I'll just get into a new car. I'll save myself this money in it. But they also have to rethink, hey, the resale value is going down every time that you don't do these repairs. Like, so let's say your wheel bearing's going on. That's not going to make it 2 years. But let's just say, for the purpose of the argument, your wheel bearing's going out. Well, in 2 years, when you go to sell this thing, somebody's going to notice that your wheel bearing's going out. Well, if they're anybody like me, I kind of do the math. Hey, this wheel bearing's going to cost me this. This is going to cost me that. That's going to cost me that. I take it off of what I'm paying for the total price of the car, because I'm not going to pay you the price of the car and then go put $2,000 worth of work into it, because now I've got, let's say, $7,000 into a $5,000 car. Like, I'm not going to do that. So then they kind of have to cut their losses on it.
Well, not only that, but when you're talking about something like suspension or wheel bearings, right? So maybe choosing not to do an alignment to save the alignment fee. Well, down the road, your tires are wearing unevenly, so you're going to have to be getting new tires more often than if you would have just got that alignment. That amount of money probably would have saved you from getting new tires, those types of things, right? That normal routine maintenance and service.
Yeah, for sure. Steering suspension stuff is very important. That will do an immediate damage or faster wear on your tires. It definitely will. If there's a problem with that, because that's the most important thing. If your tires aren't riding flat like this, or they're like this, or they're like this, or whatever, those tires. Think about it. You're doing 55 miles an hour, if not faster, if you like to drive like me. But I mean, when you're driving, that's a lot. You have to keep the friction to minimal. I mean, think if you did this with your hands all day long, oh, your hands would be raw. But think about doing that with your tires, or even more aggressive, at an angle.
How are you using that example? Oh, you're talking about the tire running against the road?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, you want to keep friction to a minimum. So, but if you have your two tires and they're pointed like towards each other, then they're kind of like scrubbing against the road, and it's making a lot more friction, a lot more resistance.
And like, are there any things that you notice that people just don't do a good job of paying attention to that ends up costing them more money in the long run because they like missed something, or they weren't looking out for it, or they're just not aware of it on a normal basis? Are there certain things that they should do maybe like on a weekly basis or a monthly basis that could just save them money in the long run? Like by taking maybe the 5 to 10 minutes a month to check to make sure, hey, like what's going on here?
Not really anything that I can think of. Most manufacturers make everything pretty, like, unless you have tools and jacks and stuff like that. Most manufacturers make it pretty difficult for just your average person to do really anything anymore. I mean, they've even taken out transmission dipsticks a lot, where you can't even check your own transmission fluid anymore, just because they don't want people messing with it. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people who try to do stuff that have absolutely no idea what they're doing, so they kind of make a mess of things too. So I see it in both ways. But
And with that, are you talking about like doing your own oil change, or what are you talking?
I'm talking about like with so they've taken away a lot of transmission dipsticks. So you can't just go you can't just go pop your hood, check your dipstick. You can't pull your transmission dipstick out, because there's either the dipstick is typically missing, or they hide it way down by the transmission. So you actually have to either put it up on a hoist to check it, or lay down on the ground to get underneath and to be able to check it. But if people don't know how to check it, or they're checking it with the vehicle off, so that's one thing that I've seen a lot is like people the way to check transmission fluid is with it running. So you check the fluid with it running. I've seen a lot of people where they check it with it off, and they go to pull the dipstick and they don't see anything on there, so they just dump tons of fluid in there, and then it's way, way, way overfilled. And then the transmission's doing weird stuff. It's making weird noises. It's not shifting right. It's slipping and all sorts of stuff, just because they've made a mess out of it. But then.
And so it sounds like what you're saying is that as long as you're going and getting the oil changes done on a routine time frame or during their scheduled maintenance, and you have a trusted mechanic, someone that you can trust to go to, they should be able to spot any type of issue that could cause major problems in the future, to be able to keep you on the road and help you make sure you're not going to have really any big issues or costly problems.
What I recommend is really two things. So first, I would say have a trusted mechanic, somebody that somebody that you don't personally know them, but I know it's going to take time. Once you find a good one, keep the good one. Keep whoever is servicing your vehicle you trust. Keep them. The other thing is, don't take it to these oil change places. Don't take it to 512 or Quick Oil Change or whatever oil change places. They're not doing inspections on your car. They're not doing a full inspection. So take it to a repair facility to get your oil changed on. A repair facility or somebody like me. Because every time somebody comes in for an oil change, I take the vehicle for a drive to see if I hear any noises or anything like that. And I'll let them know, hey, I hear that this noise is going on. Do you want me to check into that? Are you worried about that right now or whatever? The other thing I do is when I lift it up for an oil change, shake everything down, check the brakes, check the tires, check the steering suspension, check everything, look underneath everything. When you notice when people go to fast lane places where you just sit in your car and they do the oil change, they're not lifting your vehicle up. Your vehicle is never leaving the ground. So if your vehicle is never leaving the ground, they're not checking your tie rods. They're not checking your ball joints. They might look at your brakes and they'll check your tire pressure and stuff like that. But they're not doing the detrimental stuff, that steering suspension stuff that we just talked about, where your tires are going to wear out, right? So if that tie rod's getting loose or there's something weird going on, you need to take care of that ASAP.
And you brought up a good point about finding like a trusted mechanic. And so it seems like based off of your years of experience and working with so many different mechanics, when you say taking it to a shop, it doesn't necessarily mean taking it to a shop that has 12 mechanics. But when you find that one shop and you find that one mechanic that's doing it good at that shop, that you make sure that that's the only person that's working on your car when you take it to that shop.
To tell you the truth, so if you look at your repair order, it will say who worked on your car. So like if you're at the dealership and I work on your car, it's going to say Isaac right on there. I know that I wouldn't say it's really shady, but typically you can find these people. It says first and last names. You can find these people on Facebook or something, be like, hey, I see that you've worked on my car. Or you can keep going back to the same place and say, hey, Isaac worked on my car. I really like the way he does it, which I've had people do that. I like the way that he works on my car. I want him to work on my car, nobody else. And I've literally had people come in that will not let anybody else touch their car to the dealership. But what I was saying is the name that's on the invoice, go look them up on Facebook. Most mechanics do side jobs. They will work on your car on the side. Like most of the time, even if they don't have the equipment or hoist or anything like that to do it at home, usually shops will let mechanics work on other people's vehicles on the weekends. So like they could just take it to the shop and most of the time you can get a cheaper rate, getting the exact same guy to work on it, do the exact same work, maybe even at the exact same place for a cheaper price, but I guess working on it.
Yeah. My main point was with these dealerships switching out employees so much. I think when you go and look at Google reviews, that's why sometimes you see really good Google reviews and then you see really bad ones. And it's because, unfortunately, sometimes this automotive shop has had a maybe not great mechanic or a number of not great mechanics that create a bad name for the good mechanic that's there. So if you find that one mechanic that's there at that shop, it doesn't necessarily mean that the shop's good, but it means that mechanic's good. So always trying to go back to that specific mechanic that's at that specific shop. That's kind of what I was getting at with that.
Yeah. What gets tough about following mechanics is like myself. Like I said, I've been doing this 15 years. I've worked at 8 different places. It's kind of hard to keep up with the same mechanic sometimes, like unless you actually have a direct contact. Like what I did for the longest time is I was working at places. It seemed like 2 years was my number. I'd stay at a place for 2 years. By that time, I'd say, okay, I'm going here. 2 years there, going here. 2 years there, going here. And at that point, it gets hard to follow that mechanic if you don't have a direct contact with them,
Yeah, that's true.
So,
like, what's a normal, like, I guess, labor rate? Like, what's like, what is like way really expensive? Like, how could someone actually normalize this? Like, someone who wants to go to a mechanic and find out what their hourly rate is in Michigan. Like, what would you say is a fair hourly rate?
really, by the city is kind of how labor rates are based. So Sturgis is anywhere between 100 and 175 bucks. That's from Joe Blow fixing your car to a dealership. That's
Okay.
your hourly rate. If you go all the way to Chicago, they're near $300 an hour. It's kind of, if you're in Kalamazoo, you're in Grand Rapids, you're in Chicago, Detroit, something like that. They're gonna be more expensive labor rates. So
Okay.
It's just kind of a crapshoot about how big your population is, really.
And then, so let's get into like, what about buying a car? Like when people are like looking for cars, like what are your suggestions? Like what are you steering them towards to be looking for? And then like, what are you steering them to like keep clear of?
So that's a really big question to answer. I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of cars. Really what I recommend is having that trusted mechanic that you trust. Take it in to either where they work or privately or anything like that and say, hey, I need this inspected. I'm thinking about buying this. A lot of people get antsy and they say, I want this car. Like, this car is sweet. This is a pull the trigger right now or else it's gone. And guess what? They buy it. It turns out to be a piece of crap. I've had so many people who have their vehicles serviced with me who don't contact me and they say, oh, I bought this car. Well, guess what? It turns out to be a piece of crap. And they bring it to me and I give them like, I'm like, I'm not really trying to make you like leave me and not use me, but I'm telling you what's wrong with your car. And it's thousands of dollars that needs to be repaired on this car. But it's like, why didn't you ask me to go look at this with you? I would have noticed all of this stuff. Yeah.
Are there any like manufacturers that you yourself just would not buy? Like you wouldn't even go look at it?
I don't like Mercedes. I'm not a big Chrysler fan or Dodge or anything. Ford's okay. I'm not a big. I'm a GM guy. I like GM stuff. I like old stuff. I drive a '05 Tahoe, and around the early 2000s, they made quality stuff. It's the seat on my Tahoe. It's like sitting on a sofa cushion. It's so thick. I take these brand new vehicles, and when I go to training and stuff like that, it feels like you're sitting on a piece of cardboard. It's not thick. It's not comfortable. It's very uncomfortable. Vehicles, it just doesn't seem like they have as much pride when they make them anymore. So kind of slap something together so we can make a car for the general public to buy.
What about like Teslas? Would you ever buy a Tesla?
I don't think so.
Because of the components, or just because of the like the charging and going through all of the
so if I were to buy something battery powered, which I don't think that I ever will, I would say maybe like a Mach-E because it's familiar with me. And I don't really. I've done a lot of work on Mach-E's. I've taken the batteries out and done a whole bunch of electrical work on them. A Tesla, I don't think I've ever actually driven a Tesla. I've seen a few at the dealership, but I don't think I've ever actually worked on one or driven one.
So something that is interesting to me that I wanted to, I guess, talk about is with these Teslas, right? So now that did you know that they're like self-driving where you can actually be in the vehicle and it will just drive you to your location?
Yeah.
So I did some research this week in that a person doesn't necessarily have to be in that vehicle.
You know, they use it for Uber.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But like think about this. Think about where we're coming to is that we've came to a place in technology where it is so advanced to where our governmental systems hasn't seen the problem that this could create in the ability for someone to be able to hack into one of these systems and essentially create these
RC car
remote control weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already kind of a thing. It's like kind of conspiracy, kind of not conspiracy, but there have been people that have died in stuff like that where the presumption is it was hacked into and the person inside couldn't stop the vehicle and it just crashes and they die.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So
I didn't realize that.
Here's a huge benefit that I do see, especially for a drinker like myself. you go to the bar, you're not driving home. I mean, you can have your car drive you home. It's a lot safer, right? Especially if you just who wants to go to the bar and not have a couple of drinks and then be like, oh, well, I shouldn't drive home now. But I mean, I'm not going to leave my car here because I got to come back for my car in the morning, right?
But I mean, I personally think that, like, if I was drunk, I would have probably been a better drunk driver than 80% of like America sober.
Right. Until you have your first DUI, and they say, "Well, I guess I can't really afford to do that anymore."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that I don't know. That I see what you're saying, and yeah, I don't really think autonomous vehicles is a great idea, just because of how many problems I see with just vehicles that aren't autonomous. And then you have to expect someone to keep up on the maintenance. Like, there's still maintenance on those vehicles, and what if they're not maintained? Then what? Then you've got just a dangerous missile.
Yeah, because the car itself would have to be able to feel the suspension issue or whatever.
Right.
Like that. Like you could buy like a lifted Jeep or something like that and then find out that it has like a death wobble and like try to have to figure out how to do that.
Right. Yeah, you could.
I don't know who would do something like that, but
yeah.
Probably if somebody had a brother who was an a mechanic that they trusted or something like that, that didn't feel like they were going to be called an idiot if they called them when they were buying the Jeep.
What I would tell you to do is just have said brother drive it to other brother's house and just have him take a look at it with his fully supplied facility.
What if said brother lives in Miami, Florida, and other said brother lives in Sturgis, Michigan?
Then I would say, man, I guess you got a long haul. You better get to drive it.
Yeah.
No, but I guess for me, you know, in the automotive industry, it just seems like, I mean, I think you brought up a couple of points tonight. One being just do your normal service. Take it to someone you trust to do your normal service. And two, it sounds like older vehicles seem to be more reliable in terms of getting them serviced and getting them fixed. And I think the biggest issue you have in Michigan is even though things are older, they just don't last as long because you have the rust that accumulates on them over the winter and stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The thing that I see the most is they don't make, and I know old people say this all the time. They don't make it like they used to. They really don't make it like they used to. For you to have a vehicle and the engine be blown up or the transmission be blown up within 30, 40, 50,000 miles, that's unheard of, right? But it's not. That happens all the time. It's not a weird thing nowadays. But people don't complain about it because it's still under warranty, right? But it's I mean, if it's blown up in 30, 40,000 miles, like, what do you think's going to happen after the next 60,000 miles when it's not under warranty? Then it's under your belt. Like, you're paying for that cash out of pocket.
So most of these instances, you don't think that it was just like improper building of that specific engine? Like it's like model wide where like all the models of this are having that issue?
Yeah, a lot of the times it is. Like Ford has a recall right now with one of the vehicles. Like, actually, there's two vehicles that they just blow up. Timing chain brake, or the timing belt breaks, it locks up. And then the other one is like a coolant intrusion where it leaks coolant into the cylinder head. These are low mileage vehicles, and they do a recall to take care of that issue. But it's like, why was that ever an issue in the first place? Why was that ever a thing? I think what the thing is they make them cheaper to first off make them affordable. Because if somebody saw a huge price tag, they'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. But secondly, I also think that they do it to make money on the service and maintenance side. Because then you've got more to maintain. You've got more that you need to take it back to the dealership for another repair. So I think
In terms of the profit margins of a dealership, do you happen to know how the sales and service, like what the comparison is? Like 60% of new car sales support the dealership, and then 40%. Do you happen to know what that split looks like? Like, does service make more than sales? Does sales make more than service?
Service typically makes more than sales
On a monthly basis?
Uh-huh.
Holy cow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
And is that all the dealerships you've worked at, or just like the specific one here in like Sturgis?
So this specific one, the other dealerships, they don't tell mechanics the numbers and stuff, because it's like, why do I care? You know, I'm just a mechanic. I work there. Why do I really care what sales is making, service is making, parts is making? Because I really don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not important to my day to day.
Yeah. So I'd say there's something that's interested to me. So I didn't tell you this because I did buy that lifted Jeep that I told you.
Oh, no way. You're kidding.
Yeah. Did everybody tell you?
No, I was just kidding because you already told me like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, no. And so what's interesting is that in the automotive industry, that there is this essentially tool that you can use to look for codes, right?
Yeah.
On the vehicle where you can plug it in. Well, with this tool, you can change those codes and make them go away for a certain amount of time, right?
Yeah.
How long is that?
It all depends. It all depends on the code. So, like, if it's a misfire code, you can clear it. But then once it goes through one drive cycle, after maybe a minute, depending on how bad the misfire is, it's going to come back. If it's a oxygen sensor code, depending on if it's a hard fault or not, it could be 3 key cycles or it could be 500 miles. EVAP is typically the one that can get away with for the longest time, like for the EVAP system, where you can clear it. Sometimes you can get lucky and it'll be, I guess, for somebody who's scamming, you could make it go out for a week. It just depends on the driving habits, really.
So what happened is I bought it from a private seller and I went and paid for it. And then at the end, so there where that tire goes, we go, he's like, hey, I got to get something out of the back. So I was like, okay. So he goes out of the back. He had an OBD scanner and he had jumper cables. And I'm like, I was thinking, I was just like, he's like, oh yeah, I was over at our shop because he owns a performance shop, so high performance shop. So he actually works on engines and stuff like that. I vetted him on Facebook pretty well before I bought the vehicle, and I was talking back and forth with him. Well, he ended up driving it to me. He was willing to do that. And so after he gets out, so that night I drive it, and I think it was like another 5 miles, check engine light comes on. And I was like, are you serious, dude? And so it was the EVAP. And then like a week and a half later, the airbag light came on. And then I started now I have suspension issues with it. And so it's just been like one thing after another. But it comes back to, I guess, being able to take it somewhere to have them look at these things. And also you brought up the point where if something has a lift kit, it's going to just accentuate the problems and stuff, right?
So what most people do is they put a lift kit on a Jeep because that's cool, right? And they're not actually using it for off-roading or doing anything like that. Well, they want cool, but they don't want expensive. So a lot of times people cheap out towards, rough country or stuff like that, where it seems like they get like cheaper parts instead of the $5,000 lift kit. Just do the $2,500 lift kit. It does the same thing. It looks cool, but guess what? They're weaker parts. They don't last as long. There's a reason they're $2,500 instead of $5,000.
Yeah,
it's cheaper stuff. So you want it to last you 5 years or 5 months? You get an eBay kit. It might last you 3 weeks.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. eBay just sells junk, dude. I've seen actually a buddy of mine, Mitch. He thought it was a good idea. He had a Cavalier that we just beat on all the time. And he thought, you know what? Clutches are like $200, so I'm just gonna get one on eBay. Got the clutch for $30. He puts it in. It lasts like 3 weeks. A clutch isn't a small job. It's not just a 10-minute job. It's pull the transmission out, put a clutch in, put it all the way back together. I mean, you're talking an inexperienced guy. You're probably talking at least a day, maybe 2 days to do the job, which he's experienced. But it's like, man, that was the dumbest thing you ever did. Like saving $170 so you could do this twice. You know, that was so stupid.
Right, and so it's not just with suspension. Like I'm sure that there's turbos, which will essentially increase the performance of a vehicle, make it faster. But there's cheaper ones of those too, right? That can.
Well, that's one of those performance things where you're going to a whole different world of cars. So. I mean, yeah, sure, you could get like a direct fit turbo or something probably on eBay that's made in China that's really similar to what goes on. But yeah, in that scenario, yeah, it's probably going to be junk. It's probably not going to last you long. Just get the quality parts.
And that's something that you talked about when you're getting parts, no matter what it is for your car. There's OEM parts and then there's cheaper parts. And I think as a mechanic, when you're fixing people's cars, you're always going with the more expensive quality because, right?
No. So where I make that decision is first off the price difference. So if there's a huge price difference, I kind of take that into spec. And then I always, if there is a huge price difference, I give the customer the option. Hey, this is the better one. This is the cheaper one, but this one's got a lifetime warranty. This one's only got a 1-year warranty. The other thing is the difficulty of changing the component. So, I mean, if you're talking a 5-second part, let's say in, just for the sake, an oil cap takes 2 seconds. You pull it on, put it on, right? Mm-hmm. If you get an OE one, let's say it's $75, or you get one from eBay for $5, I'm getting the eBay one. I don't care if I have to get it 30 times before I get a good one. I'm not spending $75 on an oil cap. You know what I mean? Just because it's simple. It's not, you're not tearing an engine out. But now if I tear an engine down and I'm putting a crankshaft or something like that in there, you better believe I'm using OE parts. And if you ask me to use some garbage eBay stuff, sure, I'll do it. But when you come back in 3 months, you're going to pay for it again because it's not going to be covered, you know, under any sort of warranty.
Right. Same with the clutch that you're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. No, yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing all that with the automotive industry. I think these are, you know, super important things in life that, you know, oftentimes we don't realize what's going on. Did you have any more questions, Jake? I mean, we didn't even get to you being into a father and stuff, but it looks like we've already taken a lot. It's been a long episode, which hasn't felt that long. But.
Right. I mean, there's always possible future episodes and having you back on and stuff. But I guess I don't know. You've always, in my eyes, you've always been somebody that's into cars, mechanic, fixing things, stuff like that. Do you have like a dream car per se? Because I know you like trucks that are super loud. I know you have a BMW you like driving. Is there anything that tickles your fancy more than the other, or I guess what would be
it's not a dream car by any means, but there's this company and I don't even remember what they're called. So there's the car called an Ariel Atom, which is like a go-kart. It's pretty much like a go-kart that goes really, really fast. And I saw the other day, I think I was on Facebook or something, they make these go-karts that are stupid fast, 350 horsepower or something like that. I looked one of them up because I thought, all right, maybe this is like 10 grand. Like I'd buy one of these. Like you can make them street legal, kind of like an Ariel Atom. $85,000. I was like, what? It's a go-kart. I'm not paying that for a go-kart. But no, I thought those were cool. I would say probably a dream car would be like a GT2 RS Porsche. We did a track day, one of those rent a dream car type deal. I drove a lot of cars. I drove a Ferrari, I drove a Nissan Skyline, and we actually drove them around a racetrack, just beating on as fast as you could. One thing that I noticed is the Porsche was smooth. The transitions were smooth. The power, it had so much power, smooth shifts. It was just a good quality fast car. That was only a GT3, but the GT2 RS is supposed to be significantly better, like another $200,000 price tag. So,
and you don't think that had anything to do with that Porsche possibly being more well maintained than the rest of the vehicles? You just think that they're like better quality cars?
oh yeah. So the one thing that I noticed about the Ferrari that I drove is I've always had a thing about Ferrari. When I was actually in high school, I did a comparison between Ferrari and Lamborghini to tell the differences and who's been in the business longer and everything. Yeah, I always had a really big thing for Ferrari, but when I drove this one, it it just didn't feel as good as it could be. It just felt like, I mean, sure, I'm in an expensive car, but I don't feel like I'm in an expensive car. It had a lot of turbo lag. So like when you go to get in it, it would like build up, build up, build up, build up, and then it would take off kind of. Not that extreme, but that's what turbo lag is. It takes a while for it to actually engage. But with the Porsche, yeah, everything was snappy, crisp, smooth. Just, yeah.
Are those pretty easy to work on? Like, is it something you could work on yourself, or do you think it would have a bit of a learning curve?
I don't know. I've never worked on one. I would assume. So Porsche has been generically the same thing for like the last 60 years. It's pretty much the exact same car, but they've changed the engine a few times. But it's pretty much a Volkswagen Bug. The engine's all the way in the back. The transmission's all the way in the back. Everything's just right there. So
really,
I would assume probably pretty easy, but where it might get difficult is you might actually have to have specific Porsche scan tools and specialty tools and stuff like that, where it would get difficult. But I would love to do it, but first I've got to have $500,000 to buy one.
That's how much they are. Is that they're $500,000?
Yeah. So the GT3 is about 250.
Oh, okay.
That's the one that we drove, and or that I drove, and then the GT2 RS is about $500,000.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
that's interesting that you said that about the Ferrari, and it's just, I think a very common thing with car people is when I listen to podcasts and stuff like that, and just hearing all the car people talk, is the technology being at the place that it's at right now. Sure, these cars go from 0 to 60 in however fast. Like you drive a Roadster and you get your 0 to 60 time is insane, but it doesn't feel like you're going that fast just because of the technology and whatnot, or the top speed. But it's just these people drive an older like 70s car, like a muscle car, and it's more fun to drive even though you're not going as fast, just because of the vibrations, the sound, everything. Faster. Yeah, just the way it feels.
It feels faster. That's like the comparison between like riding a motorcycle at 100 mile an hour or driving a car at 100 mile an hour. They feel 100% different. One's a little bit scarier, right? Because it's like, man,
the risk factor.
Bad, yes, but you get that adrenaline out of it though too. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you have any more?
No, I know what the slingshot, I mean, I sit super low to the ground, and I rented a Corvette, and the Corvette just felt super wide and like difficult to turn and maneuver, and I always felt like I was gonna like run over something or back over something. Where the slingshot is just like zoom, like in and out, in and out, in and out. It's like super maneuverable and stuff like that.
Another thing that's kind of turned me off about Ferrari is so you can't, even if, let's just say I had the money to go buy a Ferrari. If I went to a dealership to buy a Ferrari, they won't sell you the Ferrari that you want. They will sell you a used Ferrari, and that's it. And then you get on a wait list to buy the Ferrari that you want. And that's like, if they think that you deserve it, like your money has to be better than somebody else's money, which is kind of like,
yeah,
hey man, like who are they versus me? That's kind of one of those turn off points for me. Sometimes.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that was something.
Oh yeah, Ferrari does that. I believe so. With Ferrari, you also cannot modify your car. You can't put like stickers and stuff like that on it, because they will actually It's in the contract. You cannot do that.
Only if you're leasing it, or even if you're buying it out.
If you own it.
Like, can you change the color?
I don't know if you can change the color, but I know like there's a lot of stipulations that you can't like customize your own car.
Because now that you're saying that, I'm not sure if I've ever seen a Ferrari that has a wrap on it. But down here in Miami, you see Lamborghinis with wraps on it all over the place. Different this, wrap, different that. But I don't know if I've ever seen a Ferrari with a wrap on it. Now that you say that, I'm just like, oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're red or yellow or blue or, but the
black, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that you might be able to paint it, but I don't. That I don't know.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
No, that was all of my questions. I guess the one thing we do at the end of the episode is share some stories that we enjoyed with Dad, and I think that you had some prepared. So I guess we would like to hear what those stories were.
Yeah, so I the first story that came to my head is actually kind of based on this episode. Every day we'd go to Grandpa's house, and Mom and Dad drove separately. Dad would drive his truck and Mom would drive her Suburban. And when they went home, it was kind of like who wants to ride with who. And I would always ride with Dad. And we'd get in the car and we'd put on our favorite CD. He had a CD that had Prince and Freeze Frame song. And I don't know, we'd jam out. It was only a 5-minute drive, but we were racing. Mm-hmm. But Dad would never go over the speed limit, but he always let Mom have the lead. So she'd be the first one out of the driveway. We'd be like right behind her. We're doing 55, 60, whatever. So we go all the way home. And by the time we get home, Dad would always cut through the yard and dart in front of her. And then we would always be the first ones in the garage. So we always won every single time. And I love that. That was one of my favorite memories of Dad.
Like, why do you think Mom just never caught on and like went through the yard?
Maybe she just let us have it. I don't know. Maybe she was just kind of letting me have it.
Oh, okay. I
just Mom and Dad's thing to like get me all excited because I always got super excited. Because like the whole way home, like I was kind of pumped. I wasn't like, oh, pass your dad, like I knew we weren't going to pass her. I knew we were going to wait until home. And then we were going to cut in front of her right at the last minute. Like, that was our thing. I get super pumped about it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Any other ones?
I was trying to think of some more. That was really the only one that I thought of for this week. Maybe if you have me back, I'll come up with some more.
Okay. No, that was a good one. I remember that. I remember when Dad used to have the Corvette and we would race. I don't know. Did you ever remember riding in the back of that?
So I don't remember it, but Brittany and Josh say that when we would drop Josh off to school, Brittany and I would be packed in the back window because there was no rear seat. So we'd be up in the back window of the Corvette until we dropped Josh off. And then I'm sure Brittany and I would get up in the front and double buckle. I don't remember that, but that's from Brittany and Josh have said that that's what we did.
Yeah. Well, I would have had to have been in there too, wouldn't I have? Like, I wouldn't have been able to drive, I don't think.
No, definitely not, because I don't even remember the Corvette. So it must. Maybe Mom took you to school or something?
Maybe. I would think so. I don't know how that would be possible. But
I don't.
Huh.
No. All right. Anything else, Jake? Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, Isaac, we appreciate you taking the time out to be on, share some laughter, some funny moments, teaching us about the automotive industry, and just being able to have a conversation, man.
Yeah, thanks.
We appreciate all of you guys for listening and tuning in.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being the not first guest, but the first 3-man show. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Bros before hoes.
Oh, yeah. All right. See ya.
All right. See you, everybody.